This episode of What the Tech is brought to you by XBar is a whole food protein bar with no BS. Get 25% off your first order by going to rxbar.com/Andrew and using the promo code Andrew. That's rxbar.com/Andrew, promo code Andrew.
What's the tech?
Everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Sand. Of course, I'm joined by the one, the only Mr. Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
How
there
are
you go. Hi, Paul. Sorry, I had you muted. I am really not feeling well today. I am not feeling well at all. It's one of those days. Here's some good news, though. We are moving back to Tuesdays.
We are.
Starting next week. I feel like our life will go back to normal. You know? It's like, you know, when the kid goes off to college and now you're like, we're going to start our life again. We're going to do all those things we always wanted to do.
I wonder.
Do you remember the days before I had kids, Paul? Do you remember how great it was?
You having kids is not the huge milestone for me that you might think it is.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Life was very different. We were young, we were free, and now we're old men. No, we are going back to Tuesdays so we could do the post show again. We have a lot of stuff we're going to be doing. I still need that meeting with Paul. Both our lives have been very busy the last couple of weeks, and I don't like to put pressure on Paul. I like Paul to roam free, and when he's ready, he's ready. I saw you the other day for how many minutes? Like 25 minutes? And I ran, and I had to go to work.
Yeah.
So, fun fact, that night, I got home at 2 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, originally I was going to go home that night, and if I had, I wouldn't have seen anybody. But my coworkers convinced me to stay overnight. So I did.
How long did you guys hang out there?
Not too well. Let's see. I don't remember the exact time, but
9, 10?
not too. What's that?
9 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Yeah, somewhere in there. We ended up going back to the restaurant at the hotel, which, by the way, is notably good. And if you've not been, you should make a point of going there.
Which hotel?
Right. This would be a way better story if I had that information. I think it's called let me just look it up. It's called the Redbury. It's on East 29th. And I want to say, let's see, that I should know the hotel here. I'm sorry, the restaurant. It begins with an M.
Let's see.
What is the name of that place? Well, anyway, there's a restaurant there out front. They make wood-fired pizza.
The Marta.
Yeah.
Yes. I've heard
I didn't
very
actually
good
eat any of the
it.
pizza. As you know, I'm on a low-carb diet, but it did look amazing.
Beautiful
Everybody
bar.
Loved it.
Beautiful bar.
Yeah, it's a neat place.
Yeah, it looks like a nice hotel. Very cool.
Yeah, it was good.
I'm glad that you enjoyed your time.
Well, let's not go crazy. I spent 2 back-to-back days and 8-9-hour meetings, but the dinner both nights was good, and it was good to see everybody. I like seeing.
I know we got to see
George,
each other for
Brad, and those guys.
Very short period of time, and I got I'm planning a date with Mary Jo. Mary Jo and I are gonna have a Tuesday night date one day coming up at Rattle and Hum. One of my favorite.
Coming to New York should not be the giant job I make it seem like. It's like 2 hours on a bus. Like, it's not that hard, you know.
It took you a shorter period of time to go from your house to New York than it took me to go from East 60th Street to my house in Queens. It should have taken 20 minutes. I literally sat in traffic for 2.5 hours because the Long Island Expressway was shut down.
Yeah, and so if I had to take a plane, I would have probably faced a similar dilemma. And I would come to New York a lot less frequently than I already do.
Yeah. We do have a lot to talk about. I listened to Windows Weekly yesterday, and I have to tell you, it was a very good show. I enjoyed it tremendously. It's not, and it's all Laporte. It has nothing to do with you. I thought it was a very good show, and this was the same topic that I wanted to talk to you about, and that's the transition of Windows 10 and Microsoft in 2018. And you know what the future holds, because there's a lot changing this year. I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks that I really think 2018 is going to be a pivotal year to see what the direction is that we're headed for a lot of these companies, Apple being one, Microsoft being one. Not so much Samsung, because I think there's not a, they're on a path right now. But even Intel now, this is a major year, and especially with these issues that Intel's been having and the upcoming, ARM chipsets being everywhere, especially with Windows, there's a lot that's changing, and I want to kind of touch on this a little bit. And people really enjoyed the discussion the last couple of weeks that we've spoken about this, so I want to take time and do this today.
Okay.
Before I start, Paul, Thurrott.com, you have unbelievable stuff being pumped out there, and you and Brad have been really working hard on the premium content. So do you want to talk about that for a couple seconds? I do this every week.
Actually, I kind of don't. So, let me explain what's happening, because sometime in the next week or so, we're actually going to have a big announcement. Well, an announcement around some of the changes we're making on the site, and so there's some stuff coming up. But I mean, as far as, and it's good news too, I should say.
Okay, good.
In case that sounded worrisome. But we one of the days that we were in New York, we met and talk specifically about Thurrott.com and premium, especially because it's something we're always revisiting, and what the value is and what the best offer is and what we can do and whatever. We get a lot of feedback from people who want different things on the site. We take that stuff really seriously. So many times we meet every week virtually, like on Thursdays, as you know.
Yeah.
But many times
my life.
Yeah, mine too, by the way. But meeting in person is much more productive, and so we had a very long day, but it was we got through a bunch of stuff, and so we have some ideas for the near and long-term future, but also some milestones that we want to hit to make some changes that I think people are really going to like. And it's going to be true for non-premium as well as premium. That's a big deal for us, right? Most of our readers are not premium, of course, and so we have to kind of serve both sides of the fence there.
Absolutely. More Andrew Zarian on Thurrott.com.
Yeah, that wasn't one of the
that wasn't one of the topics of the discussion. Yeah,
I mean, maybe I'm reading it wrong. I don't know, but
less Andrew Zarian. That's
less Andrew. Yeah. No, also was not one of them. Yeah.
So next couple of weeks you'll have some news. I do want before we start, I do want to thank our sponsor, and that's XBar. As you know, I am back on my diet. I'm back to eating cleaner and healthier, and these little things right here have really changed the way that I eat in the mornings. I'm one of these people. I for the longest time I refused to do breakfast. I never did breakfast, and then I started with stress of having to go to Manhattan every day. I tend to stress eat, and I was literally eating bacon, egg, and cheeses every single day, twice a day in the mornings, on a roll. So, Paul, you can imagine how healthy these things are. A bacon, egg, and cheese covered in grease on a roll that I get from a halal cart every single day. And it just wasn't working for me, and I put on a bunch of weight, and there's a little coffee shop next to my shop, and they have XBar. So I started buying these, and I absolutely love them because it's great. There's no added sugar. There's no artificial colors, no artificial flavors, no preservatives, no fillers. It's 100% whole ingredients with no BS, and they're very proud of that. So when you see this, it says 3 eggs, 14 peanuts, 2 dates, and no BS on it. It literally is exactly what's in here. This one is 210 calories, which is fine, but it really keeps you going. I mean, the amount of energy you get from this because of the high protein, 12 grams of protein in this, it really keeps you going. And I'm a big believer of talking about the products that I use, and I buy these every single day. XBar was great to send over a 12-pack last week, and this is all that's left. So you could tell that I actually eat these. It's a phenomenal company. Comes in 11 different delicious flavors. This one here is a peanut butter one. This one here is a peanut butter chocolate. I have one more here. I have one more. I have a blueberry one here. So they have 11 different flavors. They have varieties of them. You could do it for breakfast on the go, a snack in the office. You could throw it in your bag. If you're traveling, put it in the plane, tossing your bag on the plane. And you just go, and this is a great alternative to something terrible that you would probably decide to eat in the middle of the day. Here's a great offer. Get 25% off your first order at rxbar.com/Andrew, and you can use the promo code Andrew at checkout. That's rxbar.com/Andrew. Use the promo code Andrew at checkout. Once again, really great company, great product. I was talking to a friend. He's a workout fanatic, and he gave me his endorsement on this. So it really, when someone's really into fitness and eating healthy, then they and they talk about these things. We actually started the conversation to talk about other products that were similar to this, and this is the one that he actually loves. rxbar.com/Andrew. Get 25% off your first order when you use the code Andrew at checkout. I want to thank them for supporting the show. Paul, I should get them to send you these. You know, you should be getting some of these goodies.
That's okay.
Like RX bars and mattresses.
Sure.
You know, one day, I'm telling you, I've sent so many emails saying like, hey, can you hook Paul up with one? I'm telling you, one day, it's just going to be in some fulfillment center for Paul Thurrott, and then you're just going to get like 14 mattresses and like 180 cases of these.
That might not be ideal.
Yeah. All the emails I've sent. So let's get to the nitty gritty. You know, Windows 10 transition year, huh?
Yeah, it's a big topic.
Big topic.
How do I even begin on that one?
So this is interesting because they're on a positive course with the operating system, right? And with Windows, I mean, going from Windows 8 and 8.1 to Windows 10, it was a very different feel. And I always give this example. I think it was one of the first meetups we had done, or one of the first meetups I went to with you guys. It could have been the Surface announcement, the Surface, I think, debut, where it was that second floor bar we were hanging out at. Oh,
that was the
it was
Windows 8 and Surface are the initial Surface launch in New York. Yeah.
And I was walking back to the train, and there was a giant Microsoft Windows 8 billboard, digital billboard, and it had an error. And I said, "Oh boy, that's quite ominous of the scenario that this is gonna, that's gonna play out." But with Windows 10, nobody felt that way. I truly believe that it was a great positive, shift for them. It was a total 180. They went in the right direction. But now we're a couple years in, right? We're a couple years in. The Windows 10 brand is still here. We're not at Windows 11, but it's still, it's gradually still positive.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, Windows 10 benefited from the same thing that Windows 7 benefited from several years earlier, which is that the version that came out before those releases was terrible, and everyone hated it. And so it was very clear what needed to be done, right? And so with Windows 10 in particular, the marching orders were easily understood, right? We're going to push forward with this mobile app platform, but job one is we have to get back into the good graces of our desktop PC users, who are 99-point-something% of our users. And so, Windows 10 was the return to desktop computing, and start menu came back, that kind of stuff. So that was easy.
Yeah.
The trick since then is that Microsoft could approach this very differently. This is a declining market. They could put it into maintenance mode, and they could just kind of push forward to the future, but wisely, because it's still a big audience of people. We're still talking 1 billion plus people running Windows, whatever the number is. And Microsoft is only partway to this transition to the future, right? And so you have to, they have to, I should say, do something on some kind of scheduled basis to get people excited about Windows and upgrading to new versions of Windows and getting the benefits of those new versions, whether they're new features or security or whatever. And so it's been an interesting couple of years.
Yeah.
Mostly highs. I mean, I think it's fair to say, but there's also some experimentation in Windows that I don't think benefits anybody. A lot of inbox advertising, a lot of deals with game makers to get crappy games into the product, which I have a big problem with. Yeah, it's crap, which I think dilutes the brand and the value that people see there.
So what with this upcoming Windows 10 lineup, what are we doing with the SKU? Because it's changing.
Yeah. We only have a partial story here because last weekend, Brad and then and I eventually were able to view some documentation that Microsoft provided internally about some of its plans for changing Windows 10 this year. And those plans that we saw do not include a lot of the forward-facing things that consumers would see or actual users, right? These things were aimed at their partners, largely PC makers, and the way that they acquire Windows themselves and then sell it with new computers to end users. So there are actually pieces of the story that are not very clear yet and aren't covered by what we saw. So internally, they're removing at least one Windows product edition, which is called Windows 10S, which confused everybody.
It did,
frankly, and was a little too it was very ill planned.
Well, especially when it was on your flagship laptop that for many years. I mean, a decade now, people wanted this. It's actually crazy how long people have been wanting a Windows laptop. Microsoft branded, just a laptop that's a premium device, and they gave it to us with Windows 10S.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of a weird one-off, as it turns out.
So here's a question I have for you, right? This is my and I brought it up, but at that point we didn't really have an answer. I get putting this new product front and center to kind of bring more attention, but at what point did they say maybe this shouldn't be the product to do it on?
I can assure you that at the time they announced it and leading up to that, there was a huge contingent of people at Microsoft who were saying that. So, this is an internal thing too, right? I mean, externally, we can look at what Microsoft does and kind of question it. Internally, there are people who are asking the same questions, like, what are we doing here? This is stupid. It's important to understand what a failure that Windows 10S is, right? That nobody almost literally has ever chosen to use this system. No educational institution has chosen to use it. No enterprise business, nobody. And they're going to have to be more flexible about it. And so that's part of this transition, right? And so the fundamental thing about Windows 10S, which is important to remember, is that it's a good goal. The idea is to modernize Windows.
Yeah, sure. To
deprecate and then remove the legacy Win32.net, whatever it is, the legacy technologies, and arrive at something that is more manageable from an updating perspective, like what they're doing now with Windows as a service, that works and acts more like a mobile operating system, which has always been the goal, but maintains its performance and reliability and so forth over time. It's a great goal. It's something that could happen in about 5 years.
Yeah.
They tried to do it right away and nobody bought into it because it just doesn't work. We're not there yet. We don't have a viable app ecosystem for that product. It just doesn't exist. It's not evolving very quickly. It dribs and drabs. We're getting little improvements, but it's just not there yet.
Sure.
And so for 2018, what they're doing instead is they're going to make S available as a mode to all of the mainstream versions of Windows. And so for consumers, that means Windows 10 Home and Windows 10 Pro.
If you need it, you could turn it on.
Well, see, again, that's not clear. Okay. In fact, there's a lot of questions here. So what I don't want to speak out of turn in the sense that I don't want to say what I believe is happening because I don't know. But what I do know is that if you were a PC maker and you wanted to license Windows to sell it on your products and you sell to the consumer market, you have two choices. Well, actually, you have three choices today: Windows 10 Home, Windows 10S, and Windows 10 Pro. They have whatever prices they have. I don't know what those are. Nobody has chosen Windows 10S. Like nobody. Like literally not a single PC maker. And I've talked to them about this on and off the record. I've heard the same thing consistently. No customers are asking for this product.
It's confusing, right? I mean,
it's confusing.
People don't know. They see Windows 10, right? That's what you see. And you have no idea what the hell S means.
Yep. So when you consider what Windows 10S really is, if you want to kind of describe it accurately, Microsoft has a great description for that. What it really is Windows 10 Pro running in what they call S mode. It's a mode of Windows 10 Pro. The important point to that is it is Windows 10 Pro. It literally is Windows 10 Pro. What they've done is they put up some blocks inside the code that prevent it from doing certain things. But if you were to remove those blocks, which you can do, you would arrive at Windows 10 Pro. The code's there. It's on the disk. It's just we're preventing it from working. So for 2018, what they're going to do is allow Windows 10 Home, Windows 10 Pro, and also for the Enterprise, Windows 10 Enterprise, to optionally be installed in S mode. What I don't know is if you as a consumer can get that outside of a PC, if you can go back to S mode from the normal mode. I don't believe that you can, but that would be a big thing. If you could go back and forth, if you could just toggle it on the fly, it'd be kind of interesting. One of the great compromises I think that Microsoft could make would be to allow someone to bring up their computer, install the 1 or 2 desktop applications that they absolutely have to get their job done, and then flip it into S mode, right? Which sort of exists, by the way, in Windows 10 Pro today. You could actually kind of do something like this. The option doesn't mention S mode. It's not clear what's happening, but what you're really doing is preventing the operating system from downloading, or well, rather from installing apps that don't come from the store. Like there's actually a switch in Windows today for that.
Yeah, it's not simple though. I think we spoke about this a while ago. Where it's not
that it's not simple. It's just that it's not obvious.
It's not obvious. There you go. Yeah.
It's not. It's not tied to S mode or anything. It should be. It could be. Whatever. Anyway, I don't want to speak about that part of it. I don't really know what the plan is. The point of this is that PC makers are now going to have these different choices. For Windows 10 Home, the interesting bit here, and this is a little bit of flexibility on Microsoft's part, is that the price for Windows 10 Home or Windows 10 Home in S mode is the same. There's no penalty for going to full home. And what that means is that a consumer who buys a Windows 10 Home PC that's running in S mode will always be able to switch it to normal home for free. There's never going to be a cost to that upgrade. And that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's still going to be a $50 upgrade on the Pro side, and Enterprise, they have their own licensing scheme. It's kind of hard to say what that price is, but there's obviously a price built into the cost of the license that you acquire directly from Microsoft. We don't have to worry about that too much. Tied to this are new pricing tiers for these products to PC makers. Again, not something we have to worry about as individuals, but just so you know, if you buy a better computer with more stuff in it, more, better processor, better whatever, the PC maker paid more for Windows in that computer. It's interesting. And then last year we found out about something called Windows 10 Pro for Workstation. Now, this is not described as a mode, but one might think of it as a mode of Windows 10 Pro, that supports advanced hardware capabilities, meaning multi-core processors, Core i9 processors, advanced storage arrays, and then also provides unique features for Windows that aren't available elsewhere, like support for a different file system or a few other features. It's aimed at the workstation market. Now, as of last year, Windows 10 Pro for workstations was marketed and viewed and described as a separate product edition of Windows, which kind of bugs me. I think of it as more of a mode, but they're coming out with something this year for Windows 10 Home users as well that will work in a very similar manner. In other words, if you buy sometime after May 1st, 2018, a Core i9 processor-based system,
so a very, very fast,
a gaming PC,
essentially.
Right? If you buy a Core i7 processor with more than 6 cores, if you buy any PC, I think it is Core i5, Core i7, Core i9 that has more than 16 gigs of RAM, I think is the dividing line. And you're going to be running Windows 10 Home. You're going to be running something new called Windows 10 Home Advanced, which is to Home what Workstation is to Pro.
Home what Workstation is to Pro.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. So,
in other words, a home user's version of a workstation is a gaming PC.
Windows 10 Advanced.
Well, here's the question. Advanced. This is what I can't answer. If Microsoft does this right, you'll never see these names.
Yeah.
You'll buy a computer and it will come with Windows 10 Home or Windows 10 Pro, and it will come in some mode. If you buy a really low end computer that costs next to nothing, it might be Windows 10 Home in S mode, right? And then you can upgrade to normal home for free.
Okay, here's a question for you.
Hold on.
If I'm buying,
hold on. I just want to make sure I get through this. If you buy a high-end gaming PC after May 1st, 2018, it will come with something called Windows 10 Home, but it will be Windows 10 Home Advanced. You don't have to know this. All you have to know, you don't have to know anything, but except that it will take advantage of whatever hardware you have in the computer. You don't have to worry about the fact that the PC maker might have paid more for it. If you buy a computer that is has dual graphics cards and weird storage and whatever, maybe you're getting Windows 10 Pro for workstations. I hope the way they do this is there's only 2 versions and you don't have to worry about everything I just described. The worst case scenario is we're literally going to be, like, as consumers, as individuals, dealing with that entire range of things: Windows 10 Home in S mode, Windows 10 Home, Windows 10, Windows 10 Home Advanced, Windows 10 Pro in S mode, Windows 10 Pro, Windows 10 Pro for workstations. Like, imagine the complexity of what I just described.
That's very complex.
Okay.
Okay. So here are my questions now. Yep. Is there going to be a Windows 10 Pro Advanced?
Yeah, it's called for workstations.
For
Windows 10 Pro for workstations.
So the other thing is, if I'm buying a gaming machine, most of them are coming with Windows 10 Pro right now.
That's right. And that's part of this big change. In other words, the real advantage of Pro over Home today is for businesses, not for individuals. It's kind of goofy. You're absolutely right. If you buy a gaming PC today, many of them do come with Windows 10 Pro because there's a couple little technical bits that make them different. And it's actually advantageous to have that support on a gaming PC. And that's one of those things that's changing this year. So they've grown up Windows 10 Home to support those, what they're calling advanced with a capital A features, which include the, the high-end processors, yada, yada, yada.
So who is Windows 10 Pro targeting now? Like, who is that for?
Business users.
So now that's it literally means professional. Okay, so it's now this is their business line. Okay.
Yeah, this is a little
because you could turn off certain things. That's what it is. Okay.
The dividing line between Home and Pro has always been semi-arbitrary. I mean, there are certain features that kind of made sense, like Active Directory support or whatever, things like that. But there's some features I've always had a little bit of a problem with, like, including and most importantly, the inability to defer Windows 10 updames in Windows 10 Home. You can't do it. Yeah. You literally can't do it. But
now you're going to be able to do it with Windows 10 Home Advanced.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know.
So because here's the thing.
I do wonder about that.
Technically, it's always been, you're absolutely right. Pros for, business use, right? It's more workstation stuff.
Well,
but their marketing.
But you as a professional, like you're a video editor.
As a professional, yeah. But their marketing has never reflected that. Their marketing has always reflected higher end machines, pro operating system.
Yes. So this is my point. Like, in other words, to date, the division between Home and Pro has been a little squishy, and I think part of the goal of what they're doing now is to make it make more sense.
Oh boy,
we'll see. It's Microsoft. They're going to screw it up, but I mean, that's the plan.
This is more of a marketing thing than it actually is an operating system thing, really.
Yeah,
the success on this
marketing may be the wrong word because it's more like a licensing thing, and
more of a licensing thing. Yeah.
And the licensing will help the PC makers market their products in a more cohesive way. It's kind of a strange thing. But I should also mention, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on this one, but tied to this is a big support change for Windows 10, where they're extending the support of Windows 10 for businesses out to 2 years from 18 months. I only mention this because tied to that are future versions of Office, like Office 365 Pro Plus, which is kind of a Office 365 commercial SKU, and then Office 2019, which is the next major version of what we think of as Office, like the upgrade to Office 2016. Those products are going to require Windows 10, a supported version of Windows 10. And that's a big change because these will be the first versions of Office that will not run on Windows 7 or on Windows 8. Mm-hmm. So you're actually going to have to, they're really trying to force the issue on the upgrade here.
Why would anybody want to run Windows 8?
I agree with that, but then what's the difference? It doesn't matter why. I mean, it should be there, right? The thing is fully supported through 2023. I mean, that's the point. So they're making it harder. Like, in other words, the operating system itself will be supported, but the applications you might want to run on top of it will not be. So guess what, guys? You're probably going to be upgrading.
Here's a question for you, and I don't know if these numbers would be released, but we know how many people updated from Windows 7 or Windows 8 to Windows 10. Like, we know what that free upgrade path, and how many people upgraded during that time period. That number was released, but no.
Okay. Well, right? We never knew the exact number.
It's not clear, but we have this idea.
There was a combination of new computers.
Yeah. Do we have an idea of, on the enterprise side, how many companies and how many businesses took advantage of that free upgrade to go from Windows 7 to Windows 10 or Windows 8 to Windows 10?
Well, they're not really impacted by that because this isn't universal, but in enterprises, businesses who license Windows aren't really licensed. They're always licensing the latest version. So they always have upgrade rights. Well, again, it's not exactly 100%, but for the most part, as long as they've always been paying on this kind of subscription plan. So part of that subscription plan, the volume licensing that Microsoft has, specifies that you can move forward at any time. So they were never going to be charged extra to go to Windows 10. What you actually pay extra for as an enterprise is the ability in any given year to buy a license for the latest version of Windows, but then downgrade it to a previous version of Windows. That actually costs more. And Microsoft's never going to tell us what that number is, because that would be a very damning thing, because a lot of enterprises today are it's kind of a weird way to put it, but they're basically paying for Windows 10 and installing Windows 7.
Yeah. I think a lot of companies should have mishaps happen on those Windows 8 machines. I think they should just magically fall. And then
so let me give you, you'll enjoy this story because it's complete insider information and will never be publicized.
You know how much I love gossip, right?
Well, you'll like this one then.
I'm such a yunta.
If you were to look at Microsoft's quarterly earnings for the past quarter, you'll see an interesting little note in there about Windows. It says that even though their Windows commercial business has grown, the revenues from Windows commercial actually fell fairly dramatically year over year. And they literally said, I guess they had to disclose this. It's interesting. They actually said the reason is there was a large customer who made a one-off purchase of Windows licenses a year ago. And obviously that created a kind of a weird blip of sales.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing the impact of it because we're not getting, we can't grow from that. Like, it was just a weird one-off kind of a deal.
Who would that have been?
It was the UK, the country.
The country.
Because you may recall there was a little bit of nastiness a year ago or whatever, where hackers were targeting Windows XP, and they broke into medical institutions in the UK. And were able to hack into them. And so the conversation you have there is like, Microsoft can talk all at once about not supporting Windows XP. But the truth is, if a country comes to Microsoft and says, hey, look, we're going to upgrade. We get it. But we need help with this. Could you fix this for us? They're probably going to do it, right? And so my understanding of this deal was that Microsoft agreed to fix the problem in Windows XP if they agreed to upgrade to Windows 10. And so they made a large one-time purchase of Windows 10 licenses so that they could get their data back.
How many licenses?
I don't know, but it was enough to impact the finances.
That would have to be tremendous, considering
that they literally had to disclose what it was.
Yeah, yeah. We're not talking, a couple 100,000.
I don't know, but it was something.
Wow,
it was
that's
major enough that it literally showed up in the, in the numbers.
I'm willing to bet if you look at previous numbers from quarters and you look at that, you could kind of do the math and figure it out.
Yeah, I used to try to do this with Surfaces. You figure out what the average selling price of a Surface is and then do the math on the number of units sold. But it's an assumption on an assumption. And, the other thing is, we don't know what the pricing is. So if I come to Microsoft as a enterprise of a certain size, I'm going to get some kind of a discount based on the number of licenses that I buy, or license or whatever, or the numbers of, whatever it is, seats I license. If I'm a country, I might pay a different price. If I'm an educational institution, I'm probably going to pay a different price. If I'm a business of a different size and have a smaller or larger number of licenses, I'm probably going to pay a different price. So it's actually really hard. You have to make some assumptions. If the license costs X number of dollars, you could possibly guess how many PCs that impacted, but we don't know the first number. So
very interesting. I
can't solve for X and Y, Andrew.
Yeah. So I want to talk about UWP.
Okay.
What's going on with it? Because right now,
so I assume what you really mean is you want to talk about PWA.
Yes, I was going to go into PWA and how that's turning into Windows apps, but this is very interesting considering UWP really didn't pick up.
Yeah, no, UWP is a failure. I mean, there's no cute way to say it. There's no reason to save their feelings. It's completely failed. UWP is something that started as the Metro app platform, the modern app platform with Windows 8. It's evolved a little bit over time to Universal Windows Platform apps. The Microsoft Store is what used to be called the Windows Store. That's where these things are housed and where they can be acquired.
So I mean,
this is failure.
This is cool. I mean, with PWA, it can't hold native OS dependent code, right? That essentially.
Yeah. So this is Microsoft, to be clear, is not positioning this like this right now, right? They're about to come out with a new version of Windows in a couple of weeks or less than a month or whatever the time frame is. They're going to have a developer day where they talk about all the great new features in Windows 10 version, 1803 or whatever they're calling it. Neat. But the way the world works today is that there are major app platforms of different sizes. Windows is one of them. There's no doubt about it. But UWP is not one of them, and it's just never gotten the traction of the major mobile and web platforms that we see today, like iOS and Android. So PWA is the latest in a long line of attempts by Microsoft to get developers to bring their code bases to Windows. When you do that, you kind of bypass UWP, right? Because you're not creating a new UWP app. Let's say you're Twitter's a bad example because they do have a UWP app, but let's pretend you're Twitter today and you don't have an app and you want to bring it to Windows. Like, how might you do that? You could, have set aside a certain number of developers, a certain amount of money, a certain amount of time and effort or whatever, and try to make a native app on Windows 10 only. And then you have to support it from now till whatever time frame. And when new Twitter features come out, you got to put them in that app too. But the problem is you're already maintaining all these other code bases. Twitter has mobile apps and all kinds of different things, not just the big stuff like Android and iOS, but it's probably on Roku and Apple TV. It's probably all over the place. Like, where do you put your resources? Like, how do you spend your time? Windows 10, Windows is arguably the third biggest platform, but Windows 10 is like the fourth. It's, if you're going to target Windows, it actually makes more sense to make an app that runs on every version of Windows, not just on Windows 10. Although, by the way, that's changing. I mean, that might change pretty soon. But if you have finite resources, if you're not a Twitter, if you're like a much smaller company, which most are, where are you going to put your resources with a mobile app? You're going to put it on iOS and Android. And Windows either never happens or it's a complete afterthought.
Total afterthought, yeah.
Yeah, so PWA was not designed to address that problem, to be clear, okay? PWA was designed to address the fact that the largest addressable market for developers and the largest addressable market for users is on the web. These guys know JavaScript, they know HTML5, they know CSS, but if they're using JavaScript especially, they're probably using different JavaScript libraries and SDKs and so forth to create applications that run on the web. And because Google is the one that came up with this, but Microsoft supports it 100% as well. PWAs support native app features. They can run offline. They throw up notifications. They can interact with the local file system and with online services. They are secure because they run over HTTPS, whatever it is. And for most types of applications, actually, PWA can be just as powerful, just as professional looking, just as whatever as a native app. But the beautiful thing about PWAs, but web apps in general, frankly, is that they run everywhere, right? And so now, by supporting it natively on Windows 10, Microsoft can take advantage of the fact that there's this gigantic developer base, a gigantic library of applications out there that can suddenly just come to Windows for free. If that's what those developers want, by the way. I mean, they're not stealing them or anything like that. But a properly written PWA app, PWA, which is out on the web, has a manifest file that describes different things about the app. But one of the things it can describe is whether or not it's okay to put that thing in an app store. And if it is, and Microsoft will curate it, make sure it's of high quality, and they'll put it in the Windows Store. Yeah. And what that means is we're suddenly going to see an explosion of apps. And I mean, literally suddenly. It's going to happen really quick.
Well, they've been crawling, right? Microsoft has been looking for these apps for some time now.
That's right. And they've literally been cherry picking the very best ones, because on day one, when RS4 ships, or shortly before, there's going to be a bunch of new apps in that store. And by the way, for those people who are using Windows 10S today, or will be soon running Windows 10 Pro and S mode or whatever it is, those are apps they can use too. And that's a giant step forward for a platform that frankly has been going nowhere fast.
Yeah. Here's my theory on this. With Andromeda, could this possibly be a way for Microsoft to say, look at our new mobile operating system, look at all these apps that we have in our mobile operating system?
Yeah, in the sense that Andromeda will be something mobile based. These apps, I should say, PWA to date has largely been about Android, which is a mobile app platform, and generally speaking, small form factor devices like a phone type thing. So the things that Microsoft's been working on are twofold. One is native app store support, like that in the future, you could go to the web, find a PWA, install it in Windows 10. They're planning this. It won't be there in May, April and May or whatever. But right away, what you'll be able to do is go to the Windows Store and you'll see a bunch of new apps. They probably won't be called out as PWAs. You'll never know what they are. It won't matter. You're just getting an app, Twitter, like I said, does make a native app for the store. I fully expect over the next year or whatever that Twitter will get rid of their Microsoft Store app and they'll just support their PWA because they make one of those too. And over time, by the way, they'll also get rid of their native Android app because they won't need one anymore. They have this one app that just works everywhere. It's perfect. The other thing is, there's a lot going on here. We're literally not going to have enough time to deep dive into PWA, but they're not completely native. Yes, there will always be some apps that need to be native. Games is an obvious example, but not just games.
Yeah.
They're not truly native, but they're kind of what developers call native-ish. This is kind of like the realization of the Java dream back in the day. Java apps were supposed to be kind of native-ish, and they weren't. You'd put like a skin on top of an app. It would sort of look like a Windows app. It's not like that because the platform support for this thing is coming from the operating system. These things will look like native apps. They effectively are native apps if you buy into the fact that a Microsoft Store app is a native app. Developers can choose to take advantage of truly native features in Windows 10. I'll just use simple examples. The Windows 10 notification system is richer than the web notification system. So if you want to, as a developer, say, when this thing runs on Windows, we're going to run those notifications through the Action Center, and they're going to look like Windows 10 notifications. Even better still, they can take advantage of unique features that only work on Windows 10. The ability to have little previews and so forth in a notification, things you wouldn't see on the web. You can take advantage of live tiles in the start menu or whatever. There's whatever Windows 10 features are exposed to this. It's much like the way that desktop bridge apps like Spotify or Evernote or whatever, even though they're actually desktop apps under the hood, can optionally take advantage of the UWP app features like those same exact things.
Yeah.
So they're not saying this, but this is going to replace UWP. There's zero doubt.
There's no reason to still have UWP in there. I mean, the amount of applications that they have, the amount of apps that they have is abysmal. And even the ones that are in the store, the quality may not be so great, and they haven't been maintaining them. So there's a whole world of wonderful apps out there. Yeah. That were never going to be ported to Windows, and now will be coming to Windows. There's a whole world of really terrible, crappy apps that are in the store that were written by amateurs that are only available in Windows, and those aren't going anywhere. we're just going to pretend they don't exist because they're terrible. But the other important thing, this is the truly exciting part to me, because I talked to the guys at Microsoft who are working on this, is that where there's overlap in features, Microsoft will always support the native Windows 10 thing when it's better. And so notifications are a great example. Right now, Windows 10 notifications are more full-featured on Windows 10, obviously, than are the web notifications that you would get through a PWA. Yeah. So they're going to support both. But if and when the PWA notification system supports everything that's already available in Windows 10, Microsoft will literally stop developing its own notification system, and they'll switch right over to the PWA version. They're literally going to change Windows to adapt to what's happening with PWAs. If this was a direction, let's say with PWA with Windows Phone, what would have the outcome may have been a little different, right? Yeah, because the primary failing of Windows Phone was the same failing we see today in Windows 10 App Store, which is the apps. The apps were terrible by and large, and you just didn't have that key app that everyone that everyone has the key app or some couple of key apps that they have to have or they can't use the system. That's where Windows Phone really fell apart. That's a matter of timing. Just like Java was a good idea but didn't make the cut because it was technologically inadequate at the time. Windows Phone suffered from the same problem. It came out several years ago. It just never happened, right? And so it's not anyone's fault per se. We all have our reasons, why we think the thing died. But it's fair to say that if Windows, if the iPhone had just happened 2 years ago and Windows Phone just happened now,
and the platform was PWA, yeah, things might have been a little different.
A little bit. Yeah. Well, listen, that's what woulda, coulda, shoulda. You know, you learn from your mistakes, and I think this is a great example of Microsoft learning from the mistakes of the past with UWP, and now going to more of a.
They've certainly tried everything. I mean,
trying.
But it's just kind of a matter of timing. Like, they didn't invent PWA. Actually, here's an example of something that kind of supports what you just said. Microsoft. One of the ways that Microsoft tried to do a run around the UWP problem was to support something called hosted web apps. This is another one of the bridges. And so the idea here, and tell me if this sounds familiar, because it's just like PWA, was you have a web app, and what we'll do is we'll bring it into the store. We'll put it in like this container. It has to support certain features like the ability to run offline and access local data and throw up notifications, blah, blah, whatever. And we'll basically package a website for you, and we'll put it in the store, and you can sell it or give it away or whatever, like an app. Yeah. And right as they completed that work, they found out about PWAs, and they looked into it, and they said, wow, this looks like what we're doing with hosted web apps. Let's go talk to Google. And so they talked to the guys from Google who were behind this, and what they discovered was that what Google was doing, and what they were planning especially, went beyond what they were going to do with hosted web apps. And so Microsoft decided on that day, we're going to support this, and when we do, we're actually going to get rid of our own thing because this is better. So they've supported it for a couple of years. They'll support it for a long time, but they're going to stop working on hosted web apps because now they have PWAs. Very,
very interesting. I'm curious to see how the development of this continues and how this helps.
Yeah,
Microsoft in their store. I mean, look at, here's a great example. Look at Apple, right? Last week we were discussing how they're going to be bringing iOS apps to Mac OS.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. I don't. Maybe I'm going to repeat myself a little bit here, but it's very interesting to me that all of the major desktop platforms providers, we'll call them, Google with Chrome, Apple with Mac, and Microsoft with Windows, have been working over the past several years to integrate those platforms with more popular mobile app platforms, right? Apple has lagged behind the other two, obviously, in that area because they haven't even officially announced it yet. But the other thing that's happening is that all three of those guys are also natively supporting PWA technology. It's the one specific thing that they're all doing that's exactly the same. Like, in other words, they all have their own strategies for bringing mobile apps and a mobile app store to a desktop platform. But when it comes to the web and getting those into the App Store, getting those to run as apps on their systems, they're all doing exactly the same thing. They're all doing PWA. And I think that speaks to the importance of this as a platform, not just for developers who are already targeting the web more than they are the other platforms combined, but also for users who are now going to benefit from a new generation of excellent mobile apps. Excellent apps. Regardless of which platform they choose.
So this is, on the Mac side, though, this is fascinating because they do have. I mean, it's not great, but they do have a app store, right? Because essentially,
no, but it's the same problem as Windows Store, right?
Same problem as Windows, but Windows Store does not have. They don't have exe files on there. You know what I mean? They have their own.
It doesn't matter how they did it. The point is, Apple. So. This is the difference in strategy. Apple, for years, has been bringing ideas from the mobile space, from iOS to the Mac, but they didn't bring iOS to the Mac, right? So in other words, they re-implemented this stuff on the Mac. So there's I forget what they call it, but there's a screen you can bring up that's a grid of icons. I think it's called
Launchpad. Yeah,
and you can launch your. The thought there was like, well, people who use iOS, and there are way more of them, are used to launching apps like this. Let's put this thing on the Mac. And then this will bring people to the Mac. Now that didn't work because it's a stupid idea for a Mac.
Well, nobody. I never use it. The only time I click on it is by mistake.
No, because you're not 5 years old.
Yeah.
So they did the same thing with the App Store. They're like, wow, this App Store thing is really taking off. We should bring the App Store to the Mac. Now they didn't make the app platform in there a mobile app platform like Microsoft did and like Google is now doing with the Play Store, but they are curating it, right? And so. By virtue of the fact that they're being overlords of the store, it is in effect the same type of thing as the Mac App Store.
Yeah.
but it just has never taken off.
It's never taken off. Yeah.
You see the same goofiness on that platform that you see in Windows 10.
I mean, I'm looking at it right now.
Chrome OS.
Top free apps: GarageBand, their application. Open any file, which lets you open up Windows files. I don't know what that means exactly.
Right.
No, that's the number 2 free app. Number 3, WhatsApp for desktop, Kindle, Xcode,
okay,
OneDrive, Microsoft Remote Desktop.
It doesn't matter what the apps are. The thing that matters is because it's Apple and because they're curating it. What you don't see in that app store are a bunch of farting apps and a bunch of amateur hour, unprofessionally made apps. That's
Unfortunately,
what you do
Paul.
see. No, I can trust me from coming from the Windows Phone world and now on Windows 10 with the Microsoft Store. That's the problem with those stores. Like to date, what we haven't gotten is any kind of wellspring of professional apps. So the Mac App Store is lacking in number of apps and in diversity and whatever. But what they're not lacking in quality. The Microsoft Store is lacking in quality, but they do have a diversity and some kind of number of apps because they'll let anything in there. So obviously the goal for PWA should be to fix both of those problems and give bigger numbers on the Mac and give better quality.
What do you think happens on the Mac side with this store? Does this store, does it go away? Do they combine the iOS apps with this?
So there are two ways you're going to. I see. So there are two ways you're going to acquire apps on any given platform in the future, right? One is to find them on the web. Microsoft has said we're going to put them in Bing search results. For example, you'll be able to click a link, have it install. The other one is to go through a store. So if you have an Android phone today and you go to a PWA, you can do this right now. Go to mobile.twitter.com on your Android phone. You get a little pop-up. It's going to say, hey, do you want to install this app? It puts it on your desktop. It's an app. It's a PWA. It's an actual app. That's actually what I use to use Twitter on my Android phone. Now we don't know how Apple's going to do it, but those are the two choices. They're either going to add that, and I should say on the Mac, you're either going to add those apps to the store like Microsoft is doing, and I think that's the smart approach, and or you're going to allow people to install them from the web. Apple already has the save to homepage thing, right, from a web page.
Yeah.
Now, when you save a web page, like I do this for the Kindle store because they don't, the Kindle app doesn't let you browse the store per se. I mean, I know there's a small subset of it, but if I want to browse the full Kindle store on an iOS device, I'm doing it from something I saved to the homepage. All that is a web a shortcut. It is literally Safari running in its same process on the device. It's basically a tab. It's nothing special, but these apps will be installed on the device and can run offline and blah, blah, all that stuff I already said. So it's a whole nother, but I mean, the nice thing is for iOS users who are used to saving things to their homepage or home screen or whatever, will be used to this activity. And so I think if Apple's smart, they will support both methods. You'll be able to, in Safari, save it to the homepage or home screen. I don't know why I keep calling it page, and launching this thing, and it's an app. You'll be able to, you can do that with a short. I don't like a short link. I'm coming up with new words, Andrew. Anyway, a shortcut.
I get it.
If you if you press and hold your thumb on the icon, they all wiggle a little bit, and there's a little X, and you can get rid of it. And do you care if that thing is a browser link today or an app?
No, the only time that I really care is if it comes down to performance. Right? If the app doesn't perform as well as a native app on an iOS,
well, not just performance, but like this is a terrible example because this would be a problem with the native app. But let's say you're running the weather app that comes with iOS and you're offline because you're on a plane. Ideally, what it should do is provide you with the last weather update that it had, right? Because it runs offline. Well, this app may not run offline. I'm not even sure, but it should work that way. If you were to try to access weather.com for your zip code on a plane and you were offline, you would see a terrible error message. You're offline, a little picture of a dinosaur, whatever it does. A progressive web app would work like the native app. So not only should you not care how it was made or what it is, or whatever, but it should provide you with that same more elegant native experience, even when things are not working.
Well, that's the hope, right?
That's the fact. It's a fact. It will do it.
If the app is developed well, right? I mean, that's what it really
if it doesn't do that, it can't be a PWA. It has to do this.
It has to function as if it's a native app.
That's right. It has to.
I'm curious about performance.
It's just a web page.
I'm curious about performance.
Why? It's gonna. I mean, think about how like a web app works. I mean, without being a developer, without having to worry about any of the technical details of it. Think about this: you have a website, and it's displaying data, and that data is coming from a database that could be on the same server as the web server, but probably isn't. It could be somewhere in China or South Africa or whatever. The performance issues that you're going to have with a website like that are all going to be based on connectivity. The connectivity between you and the server, and the connectivity between the server and whatever services it's trying to access. One of the big things that PWAs do, and they do this intelligently too, because part of the deal is you have kind of like what I would think of as like tiered connectivity, where the performance impacts the greatest. Let's load those things first. Part of the progressive nature of a progressive web app is that it will load the smart stuff first, and then it will cache it. So you should always get the best performance possible from a PWA. And then if you're offline, it runs just as fast as a native app, because it technically is a native app. It's accessing its local data store.
I'm curious if this changes, how app developers in general between iOS and Android, how.
Yeah. So my big fear with Apple, because again, they are supporting this in Safari.
My big fear with Apple.
Well, no, it is, because think about it. From their perspective, they have a fairly dominant app ecosystem, at least from a revenue perspective. This has the chance to cut into that. And Apple has made a show of preventing outside technology. They've made a show of preventing app creation utilities that work cross-platform. So you could kind of imagine them saying like, no, this undercuts what we're trying to do with the App Store. Like, we're not going to support this to the degree that I've just been describing. And that's actually a real problem. Now, the good news is between Android and Windows, we're talking about 85 to whatever, 90%-ish of the world.
Yeah.
And if Apple users have a second-class experience because they have to access this stuff through Safari, that's not the end of the world.
Yeah,
but it's not ideal.
I want to do an experiment in the next couple of weeks where I want to start using Safari again exclusively. By again, meaning never. I've never used it exclusively. So I just find it to be very difficult. But it is on the Mac, for example.
Okay with Safari.
I'm okay with it too. Okay. I have nothing. There's nothing wrong with it. And I actually think on the Mac, it should be the browser that you pick. I mean, it doesn't have the extensions and stuff, but it's super fast. And it has things built in, like that pop-up YouTube video where you can pop up the YouTube where it sits on the side. It has tools that benefit for you to use, but I just right now I'm used to things being the way that they are. But
you can't do. I don't know about ongoing sync, but the ability to get all of your data out of whatever browser you're using now, like Chrome probably or Firefox, and putting it into Safari so that Safari gives you the same experience with your bookmarks and your save passwords, whatever you're doing, is actually pretty easy. I mean, it's not as hard as it used to be to go back and forth.
So I have a question for you. I know we're out of time. I can't even ask you this question.
Okay.
I was going to get into password security and how you manage your passwords, but we'll save that for next week. Guys, next week we're back on Tuesday. We're back to our regular, original time. So I'm very excited for this. I feel like I'll be free again.
Sure.
We'll be free to, if we want to.
Oh, in other news, we're moving our weekly work meeting to Tuesdays.
Oh my! You know what? I'm gonna show up where Tina is if that's the case.
He'll be like the guy from The Shining coming through the door.
And I can't go to Wednesday, because that got taken away from me too.
Wednesday's not happening.
Leo. No, we're back to Tuesday, and I think it'll freshen things up for me. I'll be able to kind of concentrate on this a little bit more. So we're going back on Tuesdays. We'll do the post show afterwards. We'll bring all these bits back that we were doing, like the throwbacks and things like that. So
the Morty and Phil's comedy hour.
Yeah, the Morty and Phil comedy hour. We'll go, and that's I'm not moving it after that. All right, guys, that's it for this week. I'll see you on Tuesday. Take care.